हम श्री राजीव मल्होत्रा जी की पुस्तक बीइंग डिफरेंट के बारे में बात करेंगे। श्री राजीव मल्होत्रा जी अपनी पुस्तक के बारे में बताना इस प्रकार से प्रारंभ करते हैं।
What I've tried to do is, having lived in the West for 40 years and having been rooted in this tradition and never forgotten that, I have an opportunity to have one drishti look at the other. So this is a manthan between two civilizations. That's why the cover of the book is Samudra Manthan.
अपने पुस्तक की जिल्द पर या कवर पर उन्होंने जो मंथन की फोटो लगाई है, वो मंथन उनकी पुस्तक में भी जारी रहता है और पूरी पुस्तक इस मंथन पे आधारित है।
If I want to find out, if I want to do an inquiry, which I have been doing for 15 years, on how would the Dharma see the West, the Dharmic civilization as I call it. Typically, it's the other way around. The West sends anthropologists and social scientists and travelers to see India, map India onto their terms. This has been going on for a few hundred years. And this mapping of India onto Western terms has become very powerful and has become so, also installed in the minds of Indians, especially those who are English-speaking or those who are Westernized, the people in Delhi, the people who have power, the people who make decisions, allocate resources, your budgets, things like that.
आज के दिन इसी प्रभाव के कारण भारत के कर्णधार और भारत के युवा भारत की समस्याओं को पश्चिमी आंखों से देखते हैं और उन्हीं के कच्चे पक्के इलाज भारत पे लादने की कोशिश करते हैं। पश्चिमी टोने टोटकों से भारत का इलाज होना संभव नहीं है क्योंकि भारत की समस्याएं अलग हैं और पश्चिमी देशों की अलग।
Western universalism, by that term I mean, West's own history, West's own particular history that it went through, and then the Western thought that emerged based on this history, which is remarkable, has many great things in it, and was able to solve many Western problems, but not necessarily universalizable in the sense that other people did not have those situations, did not have those problems, and to just blindly apply Western universalism is a bad idea, but it has been done.
पश्चिमी लोगों की भारतीय सभ्यता के बारे में कच्ची पक्की धारणा, चाहे वो किसी भी चीज पे आधारित हो, भारतीय समाज पर बहुत गहरा असर डाल रही हैं। उनका असर भारतीय युवा, भारतीय सरकार और भारतीय बुद्धिजीवियों पर पड़ रहा है।
Not have those situations, did not have those problems, and to just blindly apply Western universalism is a bad idea, but it has been done, and it still sort of prevails. So given the West's history and West's power, Western universalism means the Western ideas, Western paradigms becoming seen as universal. And that happened due to power, not because of some merit or something, but because of colonialism and the spread of Western ideas through humanities especially. So the way we demark the periods in history, the way we have social science theories and categories, the way some of the Sanskrit words are translated are all because of Western universalism.
भारत की सभ्यता के बारे में यह खोज उनकी इतनी गहन नहीं है। ज़्यादातर खोज ऊपरी सतह पर ही खत्म हो जाती है, परंतु उसके बारे में जो लिखा जाता है और अखबारों में और टेलीविज़न में जो कहा जाता है, उसका असर भारतीय सभ्यता पर, भारतीय लोगों पर, भारतीय युवाओं पर बहुत गहरा पड़ता है। इसलिए वो हमारे को कैसे देख रहे हैं, इसके बारे में हमारे को स्वाभाविक रूप से जानकारी होना जरूरी है। इसी तरह हमें उनकी सभ्यता के बारे में, उनकी विचारधारा के बारे में देखना है और उसके बारे में अपना स्वतंत्र विचार बनाना है।
I used a method by finding out what is the contrast with the West, and what is the contrast with the West which we all share. And if I can define a few differences with the West, and hence the term being different, if I can find a few differences with the West, which one of the Dharma traditions, or almost every one of the Dharma traditions has, then that itself forms a sort of common ground. It's a different approach. So, for example, I'll give you an example. If you take the Nicene Creed as the definition of Christianity, which is probably the closest thing to a definition of Christianity, in the Nicene Creed it starts with original sin, and then there is virgin birth, and then there is crucifixion and redemption, and all. These are very historical events. Now, if you contrast the idea of, if you take the idea of karma and reincarnation, and try to see one can fit into the other, it's easy to show that there is a contradiction. If you start with karma and reincarnation, you cannot make the idea of original sin and the subsequent events work. And good Christian theologians will not accept a karma reincarnation interpretation, although it is on the fringes of Christianity we talked about, but never in the mainstream.
भारत के युवा और भारत के कर्णधार जो हैं, वो पश्चिमी आंखों से भारत की समस्याओं को देखते हैं और उन्हीं के कच्चे पक्के इलाज भारत पे लादने की कोशिश करते हैं.
Also digested or dissolved the distinctiveness of Dharma into a sort of a Western universal. Just to make it easier for Westerners to accept it, they have diluted things in order to make them easier to accept it. And so you can get quick followers, you can get millions of people very quickly behind you, but then it is not going to be sustainable long term. For instance, J. Krishnamurti was a big shot once upon a time. He was on the cover of Time magazine and one of the great thinkers of India on the world stage. And there were millions of Westerners, but you don't hear his name now. And Maharishi Mahesh Yogi had all kinds of big stars, running behind him. And now that he's gone, his whole organization is sort of also on the way down.
एक दूसरा सवाल जो राजीव जी उठाते हैं वह है संस्कृति के भक्षण का. जैसा कि एक शेर हिरण को खा जाता है और उसके बाद हिरण का लोप हो जाता है, उसी तरह एक सभ्यता दूसरी सभ्यता को खा जाती है. यह सभ्यता का भक्षण बहुत ही खतरनाक है. इससे बड़ी बड़ी सभ्यताओं का लोप हो चुका है. राजीव जी इसके बारे में कहते हैं.
There is a concept introduced in the book called digestion. Digestion of one civilization into another. And by digestion, I mean, a tiger eats a deer or a goat, and the animal that has been eaten ceases to exist. It no longer exists anymore. Its DNA is broken down into raw material and reconstituted into the tiger's DNA. So the tiger becomes a stronger tiger, but the prey that it has eaten, the food it has eaten, no longer exists as its own separate self. This has happened to civilizations. The so-called pagans got digested into Christianity, so their Christmas tree and the mother child and Easter are all part of Christianity, but the pagans disappeared. The Native Americans got digested. A lot of culture of the Native Americans became part of American culture, but the Native Americans disappeared. And these disappeared civilizations live in museums. They live in museums. And so you could go to a museum and say what a grand civilization it was, how exotic it was. And maybe on 4th of July, some Native Americans abroad, they put on their dress and they dance and everybody feels very happy. My concern is that we are being digested into the West, which means that a whole lot of things from the Indian civilization are being borrowed and taken and reformulated and converted into Western thought, Western history.
आजकल भारतीय संस्कृति पे जो पश्चिमी देशों से हमला हो रहा है, उसका एक ही इलाज है. वह इलाज है भारतीय संस्कृति के बारे में जानना और सारी दुनिया को ये बताना कि भारतीय संस्कृति किस प्रकार से अनूठी है और दूसरी संस्कृतियों से भिन्न है. इस अनूठेपन को लेते हुए हम उनके द्वारा भक्षण से बच सकते हैं.
And the antidote to being digested is being different. Inside the book are 4 major differences that I talk about, and each of those 4 major differences is a large chapter. So the first, I just go through very quickly because I want to hear other people's comments. The first difference is the historicity, the emphasis given to historicity in the West, what I call history centrism in the West, is explained, and how this is different from the embodied knowing or adhyatma vidya in the Indian tradition.
दूसरा फर्क जो है कि भारतीय संस्कृति की एकता जो है उसे राजीव जी मूलभूत एकता बोलते हैं, जबकि पाश्चात्य एकता सिर्फ चेपाचापी की है और किसी तरह से वो चिपका कर काम चला रहे हैं.
And the second difference is what I call integral unity. of the Indian system versus what I call synthetic unity of the West. And I explain integral unity as sort of where the unity pre-exists, the one pre-exists, and the multiplicity emerges, but the multiplicity is not really self-sustaining. It is not the real essence of multiplicity. The separateness is apparent and relative to the oneness.
ऐसी कोई अफरा तफरी या केओस भारतीयों को तो प्रतीत नहीं होता, परंतु पाश्चात्य देश के लोगों को प्रतीत होता है। यह केओस या अफरा तफरी उनके दिमाग में है, यह असलियत में नहीं है। भारतीय लोग तो उसको सामान्य रूप से लेते हैं।
Here, the level of complexity is far greater than what you can handle. Your cognitive system is crashing. And when your cognitive system crashes with more of complexity than you are able to deal with, then that feeling of cognitive crash is what you're calling chaos.
चौथी अहम बात यह है कि संस्कृत के मूलभूत शब्दों का अनुवाद नहीं किया जाना चाहिए। जिन चीज़ों के बारे में पाश्चात्य सभ्यता को कोई जानकारी ही नहीं है, जिसके बारे में वहाँ कभी कोई काम ही नहीं हुआ, जिसके बारे में वो जानते ही नहीं हैं, उन शब्दों का अनुवाद कैसे हो सकता है? संस्कृत के वो शब्द जो कि उनके अनुभव में ही नहीं है, उनका अनुवाद करना गलत होगा।
The final difference that I talk about is that they call Sanskrit non-translatables, which means I talk about at least 20 words of Sanskrit which are commonly mistranslated, and why these mistranslations create a problem. And my recommendation is that in the English language, these kind of words, maybe there's 50 or 100 important Sanskrit words, which are philosophically very, very key, and we should just introduce them, make them part of the English language. Like we already have yoga, we can make many other words part of the English language rather than translating them, because when you translate, you lose context, you lose a whole lot of depth.
राजीव मल्होत्रा जी की पुस्तक से भारतीय बुद्धिजीवियों में एक लहर सी दौड़ गई है। आप उनके विचार से सहमत हों या ना हों, परंतु उनके तर्क को झुठलाना बहुत मुश्किल है, क्योंकि उनका तर्क बहुत आधारभूत है और बहुत सरल है, इसलिए उसको झुठलाना उतना ही मुश्किल है। धन्यवाद।